That's the challenge for the palm oil industry today. And at the risk of wearying you about this, every single other agribusiness in the world will soon have to meet that same challenge. The Harvard Business Review recently described sustainability as the motherlode of innovation, the single greatest driver for innovation in the world today. And the great thing is that as the RSPO flourishes, it will be able to marshal resources to help invest in some of that innovation. Secondly, talking of the RSPO, the other great positive trend that is happening in the world today is the emergence of cross-sectoral collaborations, multi-stakeholder initiatives as they're sometimes called, or what I prefer to call 21st century coalitions of the willing. There are many of these out there today. They all share common features, but some are much more influential and effective than others. What you can pretty much guarantee is that much of the leadership in these multi-sectoral initiatives comes from an extraordinary combination of civil society, non-governmental organizations, working with the private sector, working with progressive companies in that sector. Those NGOs and those companies share a hunger to move a lot faster than the lowest common denominator, and therefore, by definition, to move a lot faster than most governments seem prepared to move. Governments are not irrelevant in this story, but they have to reconcile themselves to the fact that very few of the people they represent seem to want to move fast on these sustainability issues. There are as yet few votes to be had in facing up to the physical reality of living on a sustainable planet. Now that leadership, that combined leadership from civil society and progressive private sector interests is one of the most powerful forces in the world today. It's for me, I think, to pay tribute to all of those people who were able to come together in difficult circumstances to broker the emergence of the RSPO and to keep it going over the last 8 years in a way that has often been quite difficult. This is precisely the interface where all the trials and tribulations that you will no doubt hear about a lot over the next 2 days come to bear. It isn't easy. Things go wrong. Even the most progressive companies in the world today make mistakes, let alone the less progressive companies. Even the best regulated and well-managed of NGOs get it wrong and often overclaim or make allegations that are later seen to be inaccurate. Against that backdrop, it is very easy for trust to evaporate in the face of such controversies. Multi-stakeholder initiatives of this kind depend almost entirely on the ability to maintain high levels of trust and goodwill, building that trust across the barriers of often different languages, different approaches, different mindsets, different business models, and so on. The trust that can be built up through the RSPO is paramount. And I think it is impressive when you see a large number of people imposing upon themselves something of a self-denying ordinance. When I open my mouth, does it help build trust or does it undermine it? Does it help build consensus or does it undermine it? Consensus being defined, as you know, for the RSPO as consensus reached in the absence of serious and sustained objections. For me, what is happening in the RSPO is enormously important. There is a recognition of the need to do things very differently, to combine the positive energy, the power of NGOs and private sector progressive companies to achieve an outcome that is infinitely greater than that which could be achieved by either party continuing to work on its own. As I've said, this is the moment where that leadership has to come into its own. The environmental credit crunch that we face today couldn't possibly be clearer. We know we cannot go on creating wealth in the way that we've done it for the last 50 or 60 years. We know we're living in extremely stressed conditions. The United Nations Environment Programme now tells us that by 2025, 65% of the whole of humankind will be living in conditions of water stress. Last year, the Food and Agriculture Organization produced a report saying that every year we lose at least 20,000 square kilometers of productive land through erosion, salinity, poor farming practices. We do not need any further reminders of the degree to which we are depleting our natural capital. So let me conclude by suggesting that there is an opportunity here to do things really very different. And cast your mind 10 years out now. Just think through the opportunity to build on the foundations that the RSPO has created over the course of the last 8 years. I'm not sure that people who are right in the middle of a process like this always understand its significance, understand what it is that is capable of being achieved through initiatives of that kind. As former Prime Minister Tony Blair might have put it, without being too portentous about this, I feel the hand of destiny upon your shoulders. Perhaps that's a bit over the top. Perhaps over the next 2 days it won't feel like the hand of destiny that you're dealing with. Perhaps it'll seem a lot more mundane than that, a lot more controversial, contested, difficult. But I think it is important, just in conclusion, to remind ourselves of how precious this process is. And indeed, how precious is the raw material that lies behind this initiative and this process. I haven't said very much about palm oil, but it is the product itself, the raw material itself, that of course allows so many people to come together in an initiative like this to help find solutions to these problems. A fast-growing, resilient, high-yielding, multifunctional raw material that fits the bill as far as huge numbers of processors and manufacturers are concerned for literally tens of thousands of products in the world today. Not in a way that consumers understand or recognize. Most of them don't even know what palm oil is, let alone the role that it plays in their everyday lives. But that doesn't really matter. This is a raw material that can generate huge amounts of economic value for countries, companies, individual employees, communities, smallholders, and all the businesses involved in the supply chain. It's a raw material that can, theoretically, be produced in all 43 countries where oil palm is grown in a genuinely sustainable way, as laid down in the RSPO's principles and criteria. That's a pretty good starting point for trying to make something work here in the way that you are. It provides the kernel, if I can call it that, of a sustainability vision for this industry, which is something that many other industries would love to be able to get their hands on. I suspect that in 10 years' time, the RSPO will be seen as the pioneering multi-stakeholder initiative, providing a template for other land-based industries, including pulp and paper, fiber, food, forestry, and so on. And why should it not be the case that sustainable palm oil becomes the cornerstone of sustainable, low-carbon land use in general, creating in its turn a platform for resilient, integrated economic development across the economy as a whole. The two crunches we face, the financial crunch and the environmental crunch, are pretty devastating in their impact on people's lives, but we need to respect and honor those who are trying to find solutions through initiatives such as the RSPO. Thank you.